Katie Gallagher,
Here.
Tony DeMarco,
Here.
Ron Van Kirk,
Here.
Kathy Pucci,
Here.
Mary Belbeer,
Here.
Kevin Tansky,
Absent excused.
Andy Selhertz.
Here.
Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll now proceed with our regular council meeting. We have a pretty lengthy agenda tonight. We have a resolution approving the application for the City of Brooklyn to upgrade the 2006 master plan using Community Development Block Grant funds. The estimated cost is $56,700. We have a resolution accepting the improvement target areas as designated by the county and approving the application for upgrading the City of Brooklyn's parks and recreation areas to be funded under the Community Development Block Grant Program. The total cost of the work would be $213,120, and the amount requested for the grant is $150,000. This would include work on Wrigley and Fenway baseball fields in Brooklyn with new backstops, new fencing for first and third base lines, infield general leveling, regrading, aeration, overseeding, and fertilizations, and a new LED scoreboard, a possible storage garage, and work at Memorial One Field, including new fencing for first and third base lines and a new backstop. Completion of the work, if awarded, would be May 1st, 2016. A resolution authorizing the mayor to enter an agreement with James Zupka CPA to help prepare the comprehensive annual financial report for 2015, 2016, 2017. The cost for the first year is $17,290. This may be modified. This will be on first reading tonight. A resolution to authorize the mayor to enter into a contract with the District Board of Health, Cuyahoga County, for health services in 2016 for a total amount of $43,782. This is the same price from 2014 and 15. These are health services mandated by each city under Chapter 3709 of the Ohio Revised Code, and it's an attempt to prevent and control chronic diseases like asthma, diabetes, cancer, and heart disease, which sums up and accounts for 75% of all healthcare costs. An ordinance enacting a new Section 549.14, possessing certain weapons in public places. An ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into an agreement with the Juvenile Diversion Coordinator, Lou Galizio, to perform duties in 2016 and 17. The city would pay Mr. Galizio $500 per month and a maximum of $18,000 per year. The county reimburses the city up to $12,000. Ordinance to adopt new Chapter 182 income tax that begins January 1st, 2016 of the codified ordinances. In December of 2015, House Bill 5 was passed in the General Assembly requiring certain municipal income tax mandates to each city. An ordinance establishing the position of a part-time law enforcement service clerk within the Department of Public Safety. The range would be $16.43 to $18.25 per hour. Now we'll have the public session. If anyone in the audience has anything for the good and welfare of the City of Brooklyn, please step forward, state your name and address, including city, and keep your comments to 5 minutes or less, please. Okay, we'll now move on to reports of committees, commissions, and boards. First up is our Finance Committee Chair, Councilwoman Pucci.
Thank you. Good evening. The Finance Committee met earlier this evening at 6:30. This meeting is open to the public, and the public is encouraged to attend. We did address the following items on our agenda. Resolution 2015-7, which is the application for the master plan, will be on first reading. We recommend 2015-8, the application for the municipal part of the CDBG block grant for the baseball fields is on first reading. Resolution 2015-9, authorizing the mayor to enter into an agreement with Zupka CPA. That is on first reading this evening. We did have a discussion on it because how it currently is structured, it would be 3 years because we've been dissatisfied with the previous two firms that did this work for us, Mr. Enovich is going to go back and see what the price would be for 1 year. Resolution 2015-10, the Board of Health, we recommend first reading. And ordinance 2015-56 with the agreement with our juvenile diversion coordinator, that's on second reading. Ordinance 2015-60, that's on first reading. This is a comprehensive overhaul of our tax code, and all of this was mandated by House Bill 5, which was passed by the state legislature. So we are mandated to pass and adopt this so that it is effective for January 1st of 2016. Ordinance 2015-61, the committee did vote to recommend passage by emergency measure. This is establishing the positions of part-time law enforcement clerk. However, we are going to amend that. Instead of the wording stating that we're creating up to 8 positions, we're going to word it, we're creating 1 position, and the chief will create a pool of up to 8 people. Mr. Enovich gave us an update on revenue, and he's going to be working to get together some revenue projections for us for next year so that we can use that as our starting point as we develop our budget for 2016. And he's also working on getting some numbers together for projections for a 5-year capital plan. And I believe that completes my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, Board of Zoning Appeals, Commissioner Colsar.
Thank you. The regular Board of Zoning Appeals meeting scheduled for October 15th has been canceled as no applications were received. Concludes my report.
Thank you. As Chair of the Domestic Violence Commission, I want to remind everybody that October is Domestic Violence Month. Domestic violence is a crime punishable by law, often referred to as battering, relationship abuse, or intimate partner violence. It is a pattern of behavior used to establish power and control over someone through fear and intimidation. If you or someone you know needs assistance, please call the 24-hour domestic violence helpline at 216-391-HELP. The Planning Commission met Thursday, October 1st at 6 p.m. We approved a request from Flamingo Kids Signs to install vinyl banner signs on the building front for business identification of Halloween City located at 4798 Ridge Road. This is to be removed after the holiday. We passed a request from Riverstone Land Surveying representing Bert Edwards of Intermodel 1 LLC for the lot consolidation located at 8215 Clinton Road and vacant lot on Associate Avenue. This is a contingent on a review by the police chief. Passed a request from Kenneth Ragland of Keystone Tailored Manufacturing for site plan approval for the exterior building renovation located at 4600 Tiedemann Road. And then we had old business that came in front of us. It was a request from Ellis Architects for site plan approval for the parking lot expansion redesign located at 4630 Ridge Road, or Ridge Manor, now Augustino's. We had a lengthy discussion about this. Right now, there's evidence to suggest that the lots need to be consolidated. There's certain parts of their land that is zoned residential, certain parts of their land that is zoned commercial. So until that consolidation of those parcels happens, what we approved was for them to finish the inside and the immediate outside of their building so they can proceed with their construction, but they do have to come back to the Planning Commission for the lot plan, as well as they'd like to put up a tent seasonally, and they have to come back for gazebo and lighting in the parking lot. Next up is Public Works Committee and School Board Liaison, Councilman Selhertz.
Thank you. Next week, I'll be going out with the city engineer, Mr. Courtney, to evaluate the streets for a 2016 program. These are from the list that I initially developed a year ago. Is subject to change and also to approval of the rest of the Public Works Committee and the rest of City Council. We did this last year approximately at the same time and got out to the bid at the end of January and got work done around July 4th, with bids coming in under around 11%. We have a list of roughly 11 streets, so we'll be going out to get that part done. The automated leaf truck is on the way. It should be delivered to the city within the next week to 2 weeks, so it should be here in time for the leaf season. For the school report, the school board held a special meeting on Monday, September 28th at 6 p.m. in room 173. This is the same time that City Council held its regularly scheduled Finance Committee and council meetings. Discussion item at this meeting was a review of the 5-year forecast. Also, there was approval of the fiscal year 16 permanent appropriations. Board also approved a memorandum of understanding between the Brooklyn City School District Board of Education and the Brooklyn Education Association. The board also approved the retirement of Stan Budzik, effective September 30th, 2015. The board also held a special meeting on Monday, October 5th, 2015 at 6 p.m. After some deliberation about going into executive session or not to, the meeting went into executive session. On the ballot this November, Polaris Career Center will be asking residents in their 9 participating communities, which includes Brooklyn, to vote for a .69 mil tax increase to pay for new equipment and programming. This will cost about $24 per year for a $100,000 home. Last time Polaris asked for a tax increase was in 1984. For other agenda items discussed and voted upon at these meetings or any other meetings, please go to the school system's website and click on the Board of Education tab and then on the Board Docs tab. For upcoming events, Friday, October 23rd is senior night for varsity football and marching band members. Although it's been a rough season, please come out and support your local high school team and listen to the band at halftime. Check the school website for all sports schedules. There will be a fundraiser for the high school hockey team on Saturday, October 24th, starting at 7 p.m. at Bleachers on Ridge Road in Parma, south of Ridgewood. The event starts at 7 p.m. The next board meeting is Tuesday, October 20th in room 173 at 6 p.m. Public is welcome and encouraged to attend as your school system for your children. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Next up is legislative updates. Councilwoman Belbier.
Thank you. There are several issues on the ballot November 3rd. I talked last meeting about issue 8 and the arts and culture issue. That is not a new levy, but a renewal. But probably the most talked about issues in the state are issues 2 and 3. Issue 3 is the marijuana issue. It is backed by a group called Responsible Ohio. It basically provides for the legalization of marijuana in Ohio for recreational and medicinal purposes. In April, Quinnipiac University did a poll that states 84% of Ohioans support medicinal marijuana use and over half support recreational use. Issue 3 would actually be a constitutional amendment and would authorize 10 particular sites for the wholesale growing of marijuana, and in effect identifies the groups and individuals who would have the sole right under our Constitution to run these operations. Lots of statistics are put out, like $500 million in taxes a year, much of which will go to our local governments. It would create thousands of new jobs, etc. Opposition to issue 3 is not just necessarily against legalized pot. Many feel there is need for a change, but not the way so-called Responsible Ohio is going about it. Constitutionally giving 10 investment groups sole privilege to have a monopoly does not set right with the average citizen. It seems like selected millionaires are being given the opportunity to become even richer. It was written that these investors were required to give millions to Responsible Ohio to promote issue 3. Issue 3 also would allow up to 1,159 retail shops that these growers would be supplying. That's more than McDonald's or Starbucks and 3 times the amount of state liquor stores. The opponents of legalizing marijuana, at least as it is proposed presently, includes law enforcement from Attorney General Mike DeWine on down to local police departments. Medical organizations and school organizations oppose it for their own reasons, citing medical concerns and effect on the learning abilities and skills to our young people. Issue 2 proposed by the legislature is also a constitutional amendment that in effect forbids any constitutional amendments that create monopolies for economic benefits, such as preferential tax treatment or exclusive business rights. The core reasoning behind Issue 2 is that the state constitution should be a statement of basic rights and principles, not a tool for rich individuals and special interests to give themselves privileges that are unavailable to other Ohioans. There's much written on all these issues. I encourage you to pull up the articles on the internet and go to the library. What would really be interesting is if both issues pass, which one would legally prevail since they are in effect opposite of each other. We can then probably expect a court battle, and the Supreme Court of Ohio would then have to decide. That concludes my report.
Thank you. We will now move on to reports of council, and first up tonight is Mr. DeMarco.
I would just like to thank the fire chief. I've been dealing with several issues from a concerned resident on train traffic through the city of Brooklyn, and has raised some legitimate concerns. He's got a lot of factual information, and so he's not spinning our wheels. But I want to thank the chief for taking the time to meet with us. We found access to an online portal site for the chief, which gives us access now to real-time data on the cars as they pass through Brooklyn. We can actually put in a car number and find out what's contained in that car. We also reviewed, which I was not aware of, so it gave me a little more comfort, what we would do in the case of a hazardous spill if one of the trains should have such an accident in the city of Brooklyn. So again, residents that have train traffic through their yard, mainly along Idlewood and parts of Summer Lane, should feel comfort in the fact that we do have emergency plans in place. And again, Chief, I want to thank you for your time, and the resident appreciates it as well. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Next up is Mr. Van Kirk.
Thank you, Mrs. Gallagher. I wanted to first thank all those that were involved in the Fall Fest that took place a week ago Saturday. My family and I were able to attend. My son, who's 1, he enjoyed painting the pumpkins, even though he got more of it on his face than he did on his pumpkin, but he enjoyed that. I enjoyed watching Mr. Verba and Chief Melky sweating it out, eating the chili at the chili cook-off. That was enjoyable. And of course, my wife, she entered a pie in the pie baking contest. She didn't win, but we all had a great time. And the craft show was packed with great homemade items. The food trucks were outstanding. The community truly had a great time. Even though the weather wasn't very cooperative, it was cold and rainy, there still was a lot of people that came and attended. Residents showed up, and everyone that I saw left with smiles. And so major kudos go out to Jill Ludwig, Mary Jo Banish, Councilwoman Gallagher, Councilman Selhertz, residents Barb and Dave Stepek, and Nick Morales for organizing the event. And of course, there were a ton of volunteers that took out of their time to make this event a huge success. And it's hard sometimes to find inexpensive family fun around here, and this was definitely a way of doing that. And so a great job to everyone that was involved with the Fall Fest. I think it was a huge success despite the weather, and I look forward to next year. I think Mr. Renovich will mention this in a second, but right now in our budget stabilization fund, we have almost $3 million that's set aside for the rainy, as it's been kind of called the rainy day fund. I want to thank Councilwoman Pucci. Well before I was on council, and many of the folks up here were on council, she was pushing to get this rainy day fund put into place for such a time as, for example, American Greetings leaving. And she got pushback on that for the longest time, but finally it was implemented. And now, thanks to her recommendation and council approving it, now has almost $3 million in there. So I want to thank Mrs. Pucci for that and for allowing us to be able to have that fund. Also, one more thing. I drive past the Hugo Boss plant and now the Keystone Taylor Manufacturing plant almost daily, and it's very nice to see people coming into that facility still operating here in Brooklyn. You know, many thanks go out to Senator Sherrod Brown and his office for making sure those jobs were saved, as well as our own Economic Development Director, Fem Miglerino, for finding a way to keep those jobs right here in Brooklyn. And so credit is due both these individuals, so I wanted to mention that. Also, thank you, Mrs. Balbier, for the very detailed explanation of issues 2 and 3 that are coming up. And I am against legalizing marijuana. As a side note for that, I am definitely opposed to that, but I want to thank you for mentioning that. Also, absentee ballots are being mailed out, so just a couple reminders. Again, your ballot is private. I think everyone knows that. No one should ask to see your absentee ballot for any reason. No type of intimidation can happen at your door from folks, and I don't think that's happening in Brooklyn. I would hate for that to be the case. But if that's so, make sure you call the Board of Elections. They can be reached at 443-8683. Also, there are several issues on the ballot, as Mrs. Balbier just mentioned. Just make sure you do your homework, either before you send your absentee ballot in or before you go to the ballot box on November 3rd. And also, if you do want to get your absentee ballot and have not turned in your request for that, the deadline for that is noon on October 31st. And make sure you have that in. All right, thank you, and that concludes my report.
Thank you. Next up is Mrs. Pucci.
Thank you. Good evening. The Safe Routes to School Committee met on September 29th at 7:30, and we met at the new elementary school. The main focus of the meeting was the 5K and the Family Fun Walk, which were held in conjunction with the Fall Fest. And these events were very successful. Despite the horrible weather that day, we only had 4 registrants who did not show up, and we had at least 2 or 3 people who registered that day. So essentially, we had good numbers based on those who had registered. We received very positive comments on those 2 events. Congratulations to the participants and the winners, and a big thanks to Susie Marquis and the rest of our Safe Routes to School committee. I will be contacting ODOT to discuss the process that we need to go through to update our school travel plan in light of all the schools now being on one campus. And Chief, when it comes time for the director's report, could you give an update on where we stand with the locations of the crossing guards? I know that you've been monitoring that, and specifically we're receiving inquiries about West 66th and Ridge. After I went home and got my boots on after the Safe Routes to School event, I did come back and volunteer for the Fall Fest, and I would like to thank everyone who's involved. Mr. Van Kirk ran through everybody. Despite the good weather, everyone who came did have a good time. Last meeting, we had 2 pieces of legislation, and they were relating to creating 2 new positions within the Police Department. 2015-58 created an administrative assistant to the chief, 2015-59 a law enforcement clerk. These 2 positions are needed because of the city going to regional dispatch with Parma and Parma Heights. We still need to have some people down there. While we don't need dispatchers, we need some administrative employees. There was a provision in both ordinances to allow for a progression, and the steps were $17.92 to $21.07 for the administrative assistant, and for the clerk, $15.52 and up to $18.26. But then there was a separate sentence where the mayor could have leeway to hire someone with more than 15 years' experience, and these were for both positions, up to $24.106. A year ago, we began this process where we set out to join the regional dispatch. We knew what would happen. We all wanted to be very transparent and open with our employees. And I just have to say that it was very disappointing that this could come to us at the very last minute when we had to make a decision with absolutely no discussion with council at all on this provision to pay $24.11. And incidentally, that was not recommended by our HR consultant. The 2 employees who are impacted are wonderful people and they're good employees, but we on council don't have the luxury of trying to change the rules to benefit people we like. We have to be responsible to the residents of Brooklyn. And I understand that if these 2 employees stay, that they are going to be experiencing a pay cut. And I think on a personal level, we all feel for these 2 remaining employees, because dispatchers made almost $27 an hour. And these are people with a lot of years of service in our community, and I know the chief depends on them. After a very lengthy discussion in executive session, we did reach a compromise that was actually more in line with the union contract that we expect them to be covered under. So based on their experience, they're going to be we changed the classification from an administrative assistant to a secretary supervisor, and that would be at $22.195 per hour, and the law enforcement clerk would be 19.216 per hour. We did receive an update on the situation with the cable TV, and I have to say that it's very disappointing. We have one provider where we understand we will not be up and running until sometime in January, and we don't have dates with the others. And again, this is very disappointing because we were notified almost a year ago, and meetings started taking place in December, and I know there was a small team put together in the spring, and everybody up here on council was on the same page that we did not want to see a break in service. Now, I understand that some things may be on our beyond our control because we are dealing with 3 different cable providers. However, I think not enough action was taken soon enough to ensure that we either had continuous service or limiting the length of time that we have in our break-in service. And I can tell you, as I'm going door to door, that is a huge thing that people are asking me about. People really miss watching the council meetings. And I know that they are online. However, most of the seniors do not want to watch it, or they don't have access to computers. And that completes my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Mrs. Belbier.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to send out congratulations to my neighbors, Mr. and Mrs. Tony Duda. If you know them, you might see them at the 8 o'clock Mass at St. Thomas More. They are celebrating 69 years married. That has to be the longest I've ever heard anyone. They are wonderful people. He ushers, like I said, at the 8 o'clock Mass, and as long as I've lived in Brooklyn, he's been doing that for at least 30 years. You can't find nicer and more gentler people than the Dudas. Congratulations and God's blessings to them. As we all know, it's that time of year again, political season. I personally would love to thank the Brooklyn Acres for hosting the Candidates Night last Monday. Scott Taylor was the MC from Channel 19. It was extremely well attended. I would have to say at least 125 people. It was done very professionally. All mayoral candidates were invited, and I thank all those that had attended. When they do something such as this, it gives citizens a chance to meet and to evaluate all candidates. Thanks once again to the Brooklyn Acres. They sometimes feel that little pocket over there that they're left out, and they should be commended for putting on this wonderful Candidates Night. Lastly, I hope everyone's got their tickets for October 17th, Oktoberfest at the Community Center. I heard it's a sellout. There's over 150 tickets sold. Dinner is at 5, dancing from 6 to 8. It's going to be a wonderful, wonderful time. There might be a few extra tickets, so you may want to take a chance, but I know there's a little bit of a waiting list, so hope to see you next Saturday night. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Next up is Mr. Sellert.
Thank you. Tonight you heard about the levy for Polaris. I understand there are homes in Brooklyn where every penny counts. We all have also had our own local schools come to us, the residents, for a number of years for various levies. Polaris has not. If your household can't afford to increase from this levy, I would ask you for and urge your support for it. There have also been a few calls into City Hall regarding the Halloween house decorating contest. As mentioned at the last City Council meeting, there will be one this year that I'm sponsoring. The judges will be out on Wednesday, October 28th, later in the evening, to allow for lighting to be seen better. There will be the 3 categories as before: scariest, most creative, and most original. There also may be an additional category this year. Have fun and enjoy. That includes my report.
Thank you. I think everyone covered pretty much everything tonight. I'd also like to echo the comments about the Fall Festival. It turns out North Coast Promotions given us a checklist of things to work on for next year and just kind of an exit interview. And I learned that that was the coldest October 3rd in Ohio's history, so that's our luck. But they also did a head count, and they counted a little over 600 people walk through the senior center doors. So I think we had a terrific turnout despite the terrible weather. And I just want to thank all of the businesses who donated, all the volunteers who came out, the community groups that braved the weather, the directors who came out, all of the city employees who helped, safe routes to school. Everyone just did a wonderful job, and I hope we can continue this tradition next year. And I'd like to remind everybody that they'll be having the Thanksgiving food drive in the city of Brooklyn. We'll be collecting potatoes, cranberry stuffing, all of the normal vegetable or Thanksgiving meal items. You can drop off your donation at the City Hall beginning October 26th to November 20th between 8 and 4 p.m. Also, tomorrow, this Thursday, October 15th at the 7 p.m. in the library, there's a family literacy night, and the topic is standing up to bullying. I thought that was interesting. So that's something you may want to go check out. And that's it. I'll move on to the mayor's report.
Thank you. You probably read in the paper where Attorney General DeWine had sued the two salt companies for overcharging cities, and they won. And Brooklyn had applied for our share when they started this. So we got a check the other day for $10,863.17. The police chief came to me the other day and stated that ODOT contacted him, and ODOT is willing to buy $30,000 worth of radar equipment. This isn't the kind of radar for timing cars. It's to check the traffic from I-480 to Brook Park. And the catch is that Brooklyn has to pay for the installation of the equipment, which would be about $10,000, which I think will be a good investment. The survey would last about 6 months. And they said, don't get your hopes up about rush hour, because rush hour is maxed out and there's nothing you can do there to improve it. However, for the rest of the day, it would improve. Like, let's say it's an odd hour and there's only 2 cars on the ramp wanting to come on the Ridge Road. It would give Ridge Road more time and the traffic will flow a lot better. But rush hour is maxed out and there's probably not too much that it'll be able to do. So this radar equipment would, like I said, would be in effect for 6 months, monitoring the traffic. The dispatching center, we switched over today. And like you know, it's Brooklyn, Parma Heights, and Parma. And we've already had other cities that want to join, Brook Park for sure, and I know there's 2 other cities that are inquiring. So the more cities that join, our price goes down. And I took a tour of it on Friday, and it's state-of-the-art. And the thing that I liked the best was there's all kinds of room for expanding. So as cities join and we need more dispatchers, the room is there to put them in place. So I think it's going to work out good. When we first started this, we expected to save a lot of money. I don't think we're going to be saving much money, but we're going to save in the future, because no city can keep up with buying all this modern equipment every few years. So this way, as a group, we'll be able to do it. The county would like to see 4 dispatch centers eventually, which I don't think they'll reach that. But there's 59 communities in Cuyahoga County, and there were 49 dispatch centers, which sounds ridiculous. So now we did it at the right time. We joined Parma, because if you wait, it might be a couple years down the line, and if you haven't joined one, the county may be telling you which one you're going to be in. So at least this way, we're in on the ground floor. I also attended a ribbon cutting last Friday. It was for North Shore Gastronology on 7580 Northcliffe, a very nice facility. They have facilities in Westlake, Elyria, and Middleburg Heights, and now Brooklyn. So we welcome them to the city. And I believe that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor, you reminded me in your report, Chief Milkey or Service Director Verba, could you give an update on the signaling for Ridge Road when you do your report, please? Next up, we'll have director's reports, and we'll start off with Recreation Manager McGinty.
Good evening. The Brooklyn Recreation Department presents Frightening Friday Night Halloween Screamskate. It will be hosted on Friday, October 30th during the open skate from 8 to 9:15. The cost will be free admission to current Brooklyn residents with IDs. wearing a costume and donating a Thanksgiving-related canned good for the City of Brooklyn's Thanksgiving basket. All other skaters not wearing a costume will be admitted for regular admission rates. Skate rental fees will still be in effect for all skaters. And Bring Your Grumbellies will be offering a $1 hot dog and $1 pretzel night. And that concludes my report.
Good, Mayor.
There was one item I forgot. As Mrs. Gallagher stated, that we start collecting for our Thanksgiving where we give out baskets. Well, today I got a phone call from Tridad Engineering. They're located on Clinton Road, just before you go under the underpass into Cleveland, and they're giving us a check for $800 to pay for the turkeys. So a lot of thanks to Tridad Engineering.
Next up is our Finance Director, Dan Enovich.
Thank you, Council President Gallagher. I'd like to report tonight that as of now, our general fund unencumbered balance is $13,987,570.75. The total city cash balance is $27,864,232.64. Total general fund year-to-date revenues of $16,181,436 exceed the year-to-date general fund expenses of $12,273,225 by $3,908,211.08. So our expenses are, our revenues, what we're bringing in our general fund, which is our primary operating fund, are 16 million, about 16.2, and we've spent so far. Now we've got some encumbrances that are out there, but we've spent about almost $4 million less than what we've taken in. In the future meetings, very shortly, I'll be asking council to transfer some of that general fund balance into our rainy day fund that Councilman Van Kirk mentioned. I'm going to ask our max that we can transfer is probably about $900,000. Since we've got such a healthy general reserve, I would probably ask that we transfer the max out of that. Also, we'll be looking at our transfer to our Economic Development Fund, which funds our incentive plans to attract new business. Now, that's the revenues from that come from our non-tax revenue from the general fund. So we'll look at that, and we will determine how much we have available and make a transfer so that we could pay people like our new businesses that have located here that we've created incentives for. So when you figure all the outstanding purchase orders that are outstanding, our unencumbered general fund right now has a balance of $13,154,639,000. And I did some look backs to previous years, and it's very impressive that we've continued to build this fund, which is just over $6 million maybe 3 years ago. I don't have the numbers to speak directly to them, but the fact that we're spending less than we're taking in, we're setting aside money for contingencies in the future, puts us on a good track to deal with the unknowns that we've got coming in the next 4 or 5 years. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Next up is Police Chief Milkey.
Thank you, Council President Gallagher. I wanted to emphasize a couple things with the dispatch movement. First and foremost, if there is an emergency at your home, still call 911. Nothing's changed there. If you do need to contact either the fire department or the police department, the 749-1212 number and 749-1234 number are still answered by dispatchers. Nothing's changed there. They'll still get a policeman or a fireman or an ambulance to your house. So I wanted to emphasize that. Nothing's changed. The services are the same. The police window is open Monday through Friday, regular business hours, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. If you need a copy of a report, anything like that, they can get a hold of a dispatcher if you need that to get you a police officer, whatever else like that. But like we've alluded to, they're more clerk, they're more doing more of the office work that was left behind from the dispatchers. To talk about the school guards, I have been monitoring the situation at Ridge and 66th. I understand that there's a lot of families that live in the acres that walk to and from school. The numbers at this time don't support moving any of the other guards. We did not reduce our school guards at all. All I did is relocate them to the intersections that have greater traffic. I move the school guards to where the students are crossing. Simple as that. I do encourage any family that has children walking to the acres to use Bidoff Road. We have a very conscientious school guard in Mr. Chingari at Ridge and Bidoff, along with his partner. They will make sure your child crosses Ridge Road safely and they can walk northbound to Ridge and 66th. So I'm encouraging those families to walk down Bidoff Road, those students. We do have a lot of students that walk from the school to the library. That is why there's a school guard located at Burwald and Rodone. The Ridge Road timing, we just got an update from the county engineer that the timing is complete except for Bidoff Road. That's what they're waiting to implement at this point. In speaking to the mayor's project with ODOT, ODOT is aware of the new timing on Ridge Road that's being implemented by the county. Part of this study will be encompassing that new timing along with the new timing and new equipment that they'd be installing from 480 up to Brook Park Road. Again, just to reemphasize what the mayor said, we're looking to improve the corridor. It is only traffic signalization. We're not widening the road. We're not, I've asked them to look at the lane shift, some design issues, things like that. But we're looking at maybe taking an intersection, Ridge and 480, that's graded at a D and making it maybe a D plus or maybe even a C minus. We just have too much traffic, not enough room at that time of the day in the rush hour to really alleviate those rush hour concerns. But we are looking to improve the rest of the day. At this very time, those signals are the original signals that Cleveland installed in 1985 at Ridge and 480. They have no loops. They have no way to sense whether there's traffic there or not. That is what I've asked ODOT to look at, is improving some of the equipment in that area and helping it coordinate with the equipment that the county just brought in. So 6 months down the line, you could tell me whether it worked or not.
Thank you.
Excuse me, may I be recognized?
Sure.
May I ask a question, Chief? Two quick questions. The first is, do you know offhand what the numbers are of
I have been monitoring it myself,
students
right.
at 66?
We're talking about 15 during the afternoon. Afternoons generally tend to be more or a little busier than the mornings.
Okay.
So, and of those 15, I'd say probably less than 6 are smaller children, less than middle school, and the smaller ones usually always have an older child or an adult with them.
Okay. And is there any consideration being given based on the walking patterns to moving any of the guards from where you initially stationed them at for the new school year? Or do you think we're good?
I think we're good right now. From what we've asked the school guards to give us some counts. The numbers that we're getting, they're where they should be.
Okay.
Based on where the kids are walking.
And what about, I know the schools were concerned about, and you and I talked about this, Burwell and Outlook. Do we have any issues there? Or
Again, we're just encouraging the kids to move down to Burwald and Williamston or up to Bidoff and Southwood to cross over that section.
Okay.
I've looked at the intersection myself. I mean, there isn't that turn is such a nasty turn and blind spot that I really don't want kids crossing that.
Okay, thank you.
Next up is Building Commissioner Colsar.
Sorry, I have no report tonight.
Maybe down for a report. Okay, moving on to legislation. First up is Resolution 2015-7, approving the application of the City of Brooklyn to upgrade its 2006 master plan using Community Development Block Grant funds. This is on first reading. Resolution 2015-8, accepting the improvement target areas as designated by the county and approving the application for upgrading the City of Brooklyn parks and recreation areas to be funded under the Community Development Block Grant Program. This is on first reading. Resolution 2015-9, authorizing the mayor to enter into an agreement with James Upka CPA Incorporated to provide services to the City of Brooklyn. This is on first reading. Resolution 2015-10, authorizing the mayor to enter into a contract with the District Board of Health of Cuyahoga County for health services for the year 2016. This is on first reading. Ordinance 2015-55, enacting new section 549-14, possessing certain weapons at or about public places of the codified ordinances of the City of Brooklyn, Ohio. This is on second reading. Ordinance 2015-56, authorizing the mayor to enter an agreement with the juvenile diversion coordinator. This is on second reading. Ordinance 2015-60, to adopt new Chapter 182 Income Tax, January 1st, 2016, of the codified ordinances of the City of Brooklyn, Ohio. This is on first reading. Ordinance 2015-61, establishing the position of part-time law enforcement services clerk within the Department of Public Safety.
May I
Made
be
some
recognized on
changes.
this one?
Yes.
I thought of another question.
Sure.
Should we specify, like we did in some of the other ordinances relating to part-time employees, that they're not going to qualify for any type of ancillary benefits?
We should probably add that to that ordinance that we created the chart on the back, which I don't know offhand in Mary Jo.
Right.
What do you think, Dan?
We want to keep all of the wages on one document. So this creates a position.
So you want to add it on to the,
So we would add it on to that. We would have to amend. we would
Amend the
that.
previous ordinance.
Once this passes, then we'll amend that ordinance to add it to it.
Okay. Mr. Clausen, can you make sure we have that amendment for the next meeting, please?
Yes.
Okay. And do you want
Go ahead.
me to make a
You go ahead.
motion for the
That's fine.
amendment? Okay. I move that we amend 2015-61 to change Section 1 to read as follows. There is hereby created the position of one part-time law enforcement services clerk within the Department of Public Safety. The Chief of Police will create a pool of up to 8 people. The part-time law enforcement clerk shall receive compensation as follows, and then it'll go on from there, how it was originally stated.
second?
To amend ordinance 2015-61, Katie Gallagher,
Yes.
Tony DeMarco,
Yes.
Ron Van Kirk,
Yes.
Kathy Pucci,
Yes.
Mary Bellbeer,
Yes.
Andy Selhertz.
Yes.
Introduced by all, suspend the rules
Second.
as amended.
Thank you.
To approve ordinance 2015-61, Katie Gallagher,
Yes.
Tony DeMarco.
It's suspended.
This is to suspend the rules, sorry.
Yes.
Suspend the rules for ordinance 2015-61, Katie Gallagher.
Yes.
Tony DeMarco.
Yes.
Ron Van Kirk.
Yes.
Kathy Pucci.
Yes.
Mary Bellbeer.
Yes.
Andy Selhertz.
Yes.
To adopt, Katie Gallagher,
Yes.
Tony DeMarco.
Yes.
Ron Van Kirk.
Yes.
Kathy Pucci.
Yes.
Mary Bellbeer.
Yes.
Andy Selhertz.
Yes.
Okay. Does anybody on council, any directors, mayor, does anybody have anything they'd like to add? Okay, I'd like to remind everyone, the next council meeting is Monday, October 26th at 7 PM. If I can have a motion, please?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
To adjourn, Katie Gallagher,
Yes.
Tony DeMarco.
Yes.
Ron Van Kirk.
Yes.
Kathy Pucci.
Yes.
Mary Bellbeer.
Yes.
Andy Selhertz.
Yes.